Halima Saadia, as foster mother in the rugged sun-warmed valleys that stretched beyond the ancient city of Mecca, the winds of change were quietly beginning to stir. It was a time when the desert tribes still lived close to the rhythms of nature, where hardship was familiar, but so too was generosity, hospitality, and honor. Among these tribes, there was one custom deeply valued and widely practiced: the entrusting of newborns from the city to the care of Bedouin families, so that the children could grow strong and healthy in the fresh air of the desert. It was in this world that Halima bint Bedouin, better known to history as Halima Saadia, entered the story of Prophet Muhammad. Her role, though limited to the earliest years of his blessed life, would have an everlasting impact not only on him, but also on her own family, and indeed on the spiritual history of humanity. Halima came from the tribe of Banu Sa'd ibn Barakah, part of the larger Hawazin confederation known for eloquence, toughness, and the purity of their Arabic tongue. They lived a life marked by modest means and constant struggle against the fierce environment of the Nile desert. Yet, among these trials, the hearts of the people of Banu Sa'd remained open, hopeful, and deeply faithful. The year in which Halima set out toward Mecca was one of particular hardship. Drought had tightened its grip on the desert. The animals were thin, milk was scarce, and the families struggled to feed even themselves. But as was customary, Halima joined other women of her tribe who made the journey to Mecca to offer their services as wet nurses to the city's newborns. This was more than charity. It was an arrangement that benefited both sides. The Meccan families would pay the wet nurses, who in turn provided care, fresh air, and the cultural polish of the Bedouin lifestyle to the children they fostered. And her husband, Al-Harith ibn Abdul Uzza, had very little to travel with. They owned a frail she-camel, thin from lack of grazing, and an old donkey barely able to keep pace. Yet they were driven by hope that Allah might bring them some relief through this trip. As the women of Banu Sa'd arrived in Mecca, wealthy families came forward to choose suitable wet nurses for their infants. Some mothers sought only the healthiest women, those with the fullest milk supply and strongest camels. One by one, the women found newborns to take home except for Halima. There was a particular infant who had lost his father before birth, Muhammad, son of Abdullah, grandson of Abdul Muttalib, a respected elder of Quraysh. But because he was an orphan, no one offered Halima the reward they might expect from a living father. Many wet nurses hesitated. The payment would surely be less generous. At first, Halima too felt reluctance. Their need was great, and the meager reward of an orphan seemed unlikely to change her family's condition. But as the other women departed, and as Halima saw that no one else would take him, she turned to her husband Al-Harith. She expressed her concern and sadness. "By Allah, I do not like to return with the other women having taken no child. Let me go and take this orphan." Al-Harith replied with wisdom and kindness, "Perhaps Allah will place blessing Barakah in him for us." Trusting in Allah, Halima went to Amina, the child's mother, and offered to take the infant Muhammad into her care. And thus, an extraordinary bond was formed. Bond that would bring blessing beyond what Halima could ever have imagined. The moment Halima took the Prophet Muhammad in her arms, she sensed something unusual. Her previously dry breasts filled with milk, enough to feed both him and her own hungry son, Abdullah. The child drank until satisfied, and then fell into a calm, contented sleep. On the journey back to their desert home, Halima's old donkey, once so slow now, seemed to race ahead of all the others. The women traveling with her were astonished and asked, "Oh Halima, is this not your same donkey you came with?" She replied, "Yes, by Allah, it is the same." When they reached their tents in the Banu Sa'd territory, more wonders awaited them. Halima's she-camel, which had barely produced a drop of milk, now overflowed. Halima and Al-Harith milked her and drank until fully satisfied, something they had not experienced for a long time. The other families of Banu Sa'd, seeing this sudden abundance, began to marvel. "Something is special about this child," they whispered. Halima herself recognized the truth. This child, Muhammad, was the source of blessings their family had yearned for. The desert offered more than clean air and a strong body. It was also the best place to learn the art of language and the strength of character. Among the Banu Sa'd, the Arabic spoken was considered the purest, free of the dialectical influences of the city. It was here, under Halima's loving care, that Muhammad began to speak his first words. Halima treated him not as a burden, but as one of her own children. She noticed his gentle nature, his kindness to animals, and his preference for honesty even in childhood games. Her own children loved him dearly, and the family's love for the young Muhammad grew stronger each day. During these years, Halima witnessed signs that seemed beyond ordinary childhood. Once, as he played with the other children, 2 angels came to him, opened his chest, and purified his heart. This event, known in Islamic tradition as the splitting of the chest, Shaq al-Saadia, was terrifying at first to those who saw it. The children ran back to Halima, shouting that Muhammad had been harmed. But when Halima and Al-Harith reached him, they found him calm, his face radiant, and his chest bearing no trace of injury except for a small mark. Fearing for his safety, and deeply moved by what had happened, Halima decided to return him to his mother, Amina. Earlier than planned, Halima returned to Mecca and explained what had happened to Amina. Though concerned, Amina listened with understanding. She too knew her son was destined for something great. She had experienced her own miraculous signs before his birth. With gratitude, Amina welcomed her son back, and Halima departed. Yet Halima's connection to Muhammad did not end there. Historical sources tell us she would visit him in Mecca, and he always welcomed her with love and respect. When he grew into prophethood, he continued to honor Halima as his mother. She would be greeted warmly, given gifts, and treated with the highest regard, something he extended to her family as well. Halima Saadia's story is more than a historical episode. It is a living testament to the power of love, sincerity, and faith in Allah's wisdom. By choosing to take in an orphan when it seemed there would be little material reward, she became part of a sacred story, and her name is forever remembered. Among the most honored in Islamic tradition, though through her kindness, the young Muhammad was nurtured in the healthiest environment, preparing him for the immense mission that awaited him, and through her trust in Allah, Halima saw blessings that transformed her family's life. Life in the desert was never easy, yet it was this very hardship that shaped hearts to be strong and spirits to be steadfast. The people of Banu Saad, like many Bedouin tribes, found dignity in their simplicity, poetry in their words, and pride in their independence. It was here, among the shifting dunes and open skies, that Muhammad spent the early formative years of his life, years that would leave a lasting imprint on his noble character. Halima Saadia watched over him with a love deeper than duty. Foster motherhood in Arabian society was more than a service. It was a sacred trust. The child became part of the wet nurse's household, sharing the life of her family, and creating ties that lasted beyond childhood. This bond, known as rod-of-milk kinship, held deep significance in Arab culture. Children nursed by the same woman were considered siblings, bound by respect and prohibited from marrying each other. Through this bond, Muhammad became milk brother to Halima's own children, including her son Abdullah and daughter Historical reports tell us that Shaima would sometimes carry the young Muhammad on her back, playing with him and caring for him as an older sister might. This foster family relationship was cherished and honored throughout his life. In the open plains and rolling hills of Najd, the Prophet breathed the pure desert air, drank the clean water of its wells, and learned from the quiet strength of its people. He grew in an environment where honor was guarded fiercely, where words carried weight, and where generosity could mean giving the last of one's provisions to a passing traveler. Halima observed that he never quarreled harshly with the other children, and even when he played, there was a calm dignity about him. He preferred solitude at times, sitting quietly and gazing at the sky or the horizon, as though contemplating something unseen. She also noticed that unlike other children, he rarely cried for trivial reasons, and his presence seemed to bring calm wherever he was. Halima's household, once plagued by hunger, now flourished. Their animals produced abundant milk. Their fields and pastures seemed to revive. Neighbors would remark, "Follow the flock of the family who have Muhammad with them, for their animals always find pasture." Such blessings were not only physical but also spiritual. A peace and joy settled upon Halima's home, and even in hardship, her family felt gratitude rather than despair. One of the most remarkable moments during this period was the splitting of the chest, Shaq al-Saadia. Islamic tradition recounts that while Muhammad was playing with other children, the angel Gabriel appeared, opened his chest, removed a small black clot symbolizing sign or imperfection, and washed his heart in a basin of Zamzam water before returning it to its place. At first, the other children ran to Halima, crying that Muhammad had been harmed. Halima and Al-Harith rushed to him, fearing the worst. But instead, they found him standing calmly, his face pale yet peaceful. He reassured them that he felt no pain. Though Halima felt deep anxiety over this mysterious event, she also sensed that it pointed to his special destiny. Her heart was torn. She loved him as her own, yet feared the weight of responsibility for such a unique child. After discussing it with Al-Harith, they decided it was time to return Muhammad to his mother Amina, explaining that they were concerned for his safety. Though saddened to part with him, Halima's decision reflected her honesty and sense of responsibility. When Halima and Al-Harith brought Muhammad back to Mecca, Amina listened to their account of the incident with deep thoughtfulness. She shared with them her own experiences, visions, and dreams she had during her pregnancy that foretold her son's greatness. Though she thanked Halima for her care, Amina seemed unsurprised by the extraordinary events, as if she already knew that her son's life would be marked by the miraculous. Halima departed Mecca with both relief and sadness. Relief, because she had fulfilled her trust faithfully. Sadness, because she was parting from a child who had brought light and blessing into her family's life. Years passed, but Halima's love for Muhammad did not fade. Historical sources tell us that later, after he received prophethood, Halima visited him in Mecca. Despite his new, immense responsibilities and the opposition he faced, the Prophet welcomed Halima with affection. On one occasion, he laid his cloak on the ground for her to sit upon, honoring her before all who were present. He would speak to her warmly, inquire after her well-being, and offer gifts. When Halima and her family faced hardship, the Prophet helped them generously. This conduct exemplifies the Islamic principle of honoring those who cared for us in childhood. Parents, foster parents, teachers, and elders. The Prophet taught by example that love, gratitude, and loyalty are lifelong virtues. To understand the full significance of Halima's role, it helps to see fosterage through the lens of Arabian society before Islam. Among the Quraysh and neighboring tribes, it was common to send newborns, especially boys, to live among Bedouins for the first few years of life. The reasons were both practical and cultural. Health. The desert air was considered cleaner than the crowded city, and Bedouin diets often healthier. Language. The Bedouin tribe spoke classical Arabic, free from foreign influences, giving children eloquence valued in poetry, diplomacy, and leadership. Character. Desert life demanded resilience, independence, and generosity, or qualities admired in leaders. In this context, Halima's service was deeply respected. The Quraysh saw foster mothers not merely as caretakers, but as teachers, protectors, and second mothers whose impact lasted a lifetime. Halima Saadia's story shines with timeless virtues, generosity, and sacrifice. She took in an orphan despite poverty, hoping for Allah's blessing rather than certain wealth. Trust in Allah, she set out on her journey with meager provisions, yet returned with blessings. Gentleness. Her care for Muhammad was marked by tenderness and love. Honesty. She returned him to his mother when she feared for his safety, even though it meant losing the blessings his presence brought. Through her actions, Halima became more than a historical figure. She became a living example of how sincerity and faith can transform hardship into honor. For the family of Halima, the blessings of hosting Muhammad echoed through generations. The memory of her kindness became part of the Seerah biography of the Prophet, taught to Muslims around the world. Her name is mentioned with love and respect whenever scholars and believers recount the early life of the Prophet. Even centuries later, her story inspires those who face poverty, reminding them that true wealth lies not only in material riches, but in acts of compassion, sincerity, and trust in Allah. As we look deeper into the life of Halima Saadia and the years the young Muhammad spent among the Banu Saad, we begin to see how those quiet, early days under her care became a hidden foundation for the remarkable life that followed. While the revelation would come much later, the seeds of character, resilience, and grace were sown in the desert sands, watered by the gentle hand of Halima, and nourished by the purity of Bedouin life. The Prophet himself would later display qualities that reflected this unique upbringing. Clarity of speech. He spoke with eloquence that captivated both friend and foe, a mastery rooted in the pure Arabic he learned among the Banu Saad. Strength and resilience. The harsh desert taught patience and endurance, qualities he would need to bear the weight of revelation and the hostility of opponents. Compassion and humility. Though he became the leader of a vast community, he never forgot those who cared for him in childhood. These qualities were shaped by both divine guidance and the human warmth of those around him. In his early years, none more significant than Halima Saadia. After the Prophet declared his message, his life grew busier, and Mecca became a place of conflict as Quraysh resisted the call to Islam. Yet even then, when Halima visited, the Prophet received her as a mother. One narration describes Halima arriving when the Prophet had grown and married Khadijah. At the sight of Halima, the Prophet stood, spread his cloak for her to sit upon, and spoke to her with great affection. Recognizing her poverty, he gifted her 40 sheep and a riding camel, an act reflecting not mere charity, but deep love and loyalty. Halima's daughter, Seerah too, would later meet the Prophet after the Battle of Hunain. The Prophet honored her and offered her safety and kindness, demonstrating the enduring bond of milk kinship. The story of Halima Saadia beautifully illustrates one of Islam's core teachings, shukr. In the Quran, Allah says, "And we have enjoined upon man kindness to parents." Quran 46-15. The Prophet embodied this teaching in his dealings with Halima. No matter how high his rank rose, he honored her as the woman who cared for him when he was most vulnerable. This ethic of gratitude extends beyond family to teachers, friends, neighbors, and all who show kindness. Through Halima's story, Muslims learn that remembering those who helped us in childhood is not only noble, it is an act of worship. Islamic historians and scholars, from Ibn Ishaq to Ibn Hisham and Ibn Sa'd, preserved Halima's story as part of the Seerah of the Prophet. Her words and memories help us understand not only the Prophet's early years, but also the culture and values of the time. Through these records, we see a woman of honesty, faith, and courage, qualities that led her to embrace the orphaned Muhammad. Despite her poverty in pre-Islamic Arabia, and still in Islamic law today, milk kinship creates bonds equivalent in many respects to blood ties. Foster siblings are regarded as mahram, unmarriageable kin, and respect between foster parents and their milk children is deeply emphasized. By highlighting Halima's place in the Prophet's life, Islamic tradition underlines the sacredness of these relationships. The milk mother becomes a true mother not merely by contract, but by love and shared sustenance. Halima's choice to take in an orphan, driven by hope in Allah's mercy rather than worldly reward, transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. Her livestock prospered when others did not. Her home was filled with peace. Her name would be remembered by millions across centuries. These are signs of the Barakah, the divine blessing that flows not from wealth or power, but from sincerity, compassion, and faith. Halima's story offers profound lessons for every generation. Never underestimate small acts of kindness. Taking in an orphan seemed a humble decision, but it placed Halima in the heart of a story that changed the world. Trust in Allah, even in hardship. Halima traveled to Mecca with little, yet returned with blessings greater than gold. Honor your benefactors. The Prophet never forgot Halima, teaching us that gratitude is a sign of faith. Love creates lasting bonds. Halima's love for Muhammad turned a social contract into a sacred relationship cherished forever. Though she returned to the quiet life of the desert, Halima's name shines among the honored women of Islamic history. Her role, though confined to the Prophet's earliest years, was essential in nurturing the character of the one who would become Rahmatan lil Alamina, mercy to the worlds. Her gentle care helped shape a child who would grow to transform hearts, societies, and civilizations. This truth reminds us that sometimes history is changed not only by warriors and scholars, but by mothers, both by birth and by choice, whose quiet sacrifices nurture greatness. In every telling of the Prophet Muhammad's biography, Halima Saadia's name appears as a symbol of compassion, faith, and divine blessing. Through her, we learn that kindness is rewarded in ways we may never see coming. Even the most humble people can play vital roles in great stories. True honor lies not in wealth or fame, but in love, sincerity, and trust in Allah. Her story, stretching across centuries, continues to inspire hearts to this day, reminding us that the hands which cradle a child can, by Allah's will, help cradle the future of humanity. In the vast sunburnt plains of Najd, the winds carried with them the whispers of hope and hardship alike. Among the scattered tents of the Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr, a family struggled to keep hunger from their door. Halima bint Abi Duwayi, a woman known among her people for her gentle heart, and her husband Al-Harith ibn Abdul Uzza faced each day with quiet resilience. Their poverty was heavy, their camel was old and gave little milk. The donkey that pulled their small load was thin and weak, and their few goats wandered the dust in search of pasture that had long since withered under the harsh desert sun. Yet, as was customary among the tribes, Halima prepared to journey to Mecca with other women to offer her service as a wet nurse to newborns of the Quraysh. It was an ancient practice that joined city and desert. Mothers in Mecca entrusted their infants to Bedouin wet nurses so that the children might grow strong in the fresh air of the open plains, away from the illnesses of crowded city life, and learn the purest form of Arabic spoken among the tribes. For families like Halima's, it offered hope, modest payment, gifts, and sometimes lasting ties of milk kinship that brought honor. As Halima and her husband gathered what little they could carry, there was a heaviness in her heart. The camel hardly yielded any milk, and her baby son Abdullah often went to bed still hungry. The donkey moved so slowly that Halima feared they might not even reach Mecca with the others. Yet, in her heart, Halima whispered a prayer, a hope that perhaps Allah would place Barakah blessing in their journey, though she could see no sign of how that blessing might come. Arriving in Mecca, Halima watched as the other wet nurses quickly found infants to foster. Wealthy families approached them, promising generous payment, fine clothes, or help for the families that took in their children. But there was one child, a newborn whose father had died before his birth, Muhammad, the orphan son of Abdullah and Amina. Many of the wet nurses hesitated or quietly turned away. They feared that an orphan's family could not afford the usual payment. Each passing hour made Halima's heart sink further. She was among the poorest of the women, her hope resting on the income this child could bring. But each day, she left, the little boy thinking of her own hunger and the fear that even a few coins might not come from an orphan's home. At last, as the other women prepared to depart for their return to the desert, Halima spoke to her husband, By Allah, I do not like to return with the other women and have taken no child. Let me take this orphan. Al-Harith, wise and hopeful, answered softly, Perhaps Allah will place blessing in him for us. And so, Halima went to Amina, offered to take the newborn Muhammad into her care. What happened next was so swift and gentle that at first Halima barely understood it. As soon as she took the infant into her arms, her dry breasts that had left her own baby, Abdullah, hungry now overflowed with milk. Muhammad nursed until he was full and slept peacefully. Abdullah too drank his fill for the first time in days. In that moment, Halima's heart felt the quiet certainty that something extraordinary had entered her life. The journey back to the desert revealed yet more wonders. The donkey that had stumbled and lagged now moved so swiftly that the other women asked in amazement, Oh, Halima, is this not your donkey you came on? Her camel, which had given almost no milk before, now stood firm and heavy with milk. That night, Halima and Al-Harith drank fully and were satisfied, a relief that neither had tasted in a long time. Back in the desert, the blessings continued. The animals in Halima's small herd began to produce milk abundantly, while the flocks of the neighbors still showed signs of drought. Her goats returned home in the evenings with full udders. Day after day, Halima and Al-Harith saw that whatever pasture their animals grazed upon, it seemed greener and more plentiful. The other families of Banu Sa'd, seeing this, began to send their animals to graze where Halima's animals grazed, hoping to share in the unseen blessing. Halima herself felt this blessing in more than food and milk. In the child Muhammad, she found a source of calm and grace. He never cried out of hunger, never demanded more than was given, and never caused mischief among the other children. Her own children loved him deeply. Her daughter Shaima often carried him, playing and singing softly to comfort him. And in the evenings, when the desert grew cold and stars gathered above them, Halima sometimes watched the young Muhammad, gazing at the sky, quiet and thoughtful in a way uncommon for a small child. Even the language he began to speak carried a sweetness that caught the ear. Among the Bedouin tribes, language was a mark of nobility, and from his earliest words, Muhammad showed a grace and eloquence that delighted all who heard him. One day, as Muhammad played with the other children in the desert, something happened that would remain etched in Halima's heart. The children came running, frightened, crying that two men had taken Muhammad and done something to him. Halima and Al-Harith rushed to find him. They found the boy pale but calm. Islamic tradition tells us that these were angels who opened his chest. washed his heart, and purified it for the life that awaited him. Though Halima found no wound upon his body except a small mark, her heart was filled with fear. The weight of caring for such a child so clearly set apart by destiny felt suddenly heavier. After discussing it with Al-Harith, Halima decided it was time to return him to his mother, Amina, in Mecca. When Halima explained what had happened, Amina listened thoughtfully. She spoke of the signs she herself had seen before his birth, signs that spoke of greatness to come. Though saddened by the parting, Halima returned home, carrying both relief and a lingering sorrow. She had brought the boy home healthy and strong, but her heart felt emptier for his absence. Years passed, yet the blessings did not end. When Halima visited Mecca later, after Muhammad had grown, he welcomed her not as a stranger from his past, but as a mother. He rose to greet her, spread his cloak upon the ground for her to sit on, and spoke with warmth and respect. He would offer her gifts and ensure that her needs were met, honoring her as a mother deserves. When Halima's family faced hardship, Muhammad would help them generously, showing the gratitude that Islam teaches, to remember those who cared for us when we could not care for ourselves. In the time of revelation, when Muhammad had become the prophet of Allah, Halima and her family continued to be honored by him. His milk sister Shaima too was recognized with love and respect. Such was the enduring bond created by milk, kinship, a bond that in Islam is sacred and lifelong. Reflecting upon the story, it becomes clear that the blessings to Halima's household were not only the sudden abundance of milk, the strength of animals, or relief from hunger. The truer blessing lay in the quiet peace that entered their tent, the love that grew between hearts, and the place they earned in the story of a man who had changed the world. Halima's family began as a family, poor in wealth, yet they were rich in faith, compassion, and hope. By choosing to take in an orphan when reason might have told her to seek a child from a wealthy family, Halima made a choice of sincerity and trust, and Allah, in His wisdom and mercy, turned that choice into a river of blessing, flowing far beyond the dry sands of Najd. The name of Halima Saadia is still spoken with love by Muslims everywhere. As part of the blessed story of the Prophet, her decision to bring an orphan into her home, driven by both human need and a heart open to Allah's decree, became a source of lasting honor. In the end, what Halima's story teaches is that blessings are not always found in gold or silver. Sometimes they arrive wrapped in small hands, a quiet gaze, and a gentle heart. And through patience, faith, and kindness, those blessings multiply in ways beyond our imagination, turning a poor family's hardship into a story that would echo across history. Halima's household, once marked by want, became a household marked by grace. Her camels and goats gave milk, her children were fed and slept peacefully, and her name was lifted from the tents of Banu Sa'd to the pages of history. Yet the greatest blessing of all was to be part of the life of the one sent as a mercy to all worlds. In loving him, caring for him, and trusting in Allah, Halima Saadia found blessings that no hardship could ever take away.